Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Augmenting What Humans Do, Innovation Technology in Law Firms. My name is Naila Issa, and I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. You can maximize or minimize the webinar pane during the presentation by using the red, orange arrow buttons in the upper left corner. During the webinar, we also encourage you to ask questions. In the webinar pane, you'll see a questions box that you can use to type your question in and click submit. Our presenters will answer those questions as time allows throughout the presentation. Second, for good audio quality, please check your setting to ensure the appropriate audio option is selected. If you're using a telephone, please click on the phone call audio option. Or if you're listening through your computer, then please click on the computer audio option. Also, please note as a participant, you will receive a link to download the slide deck and recorded presentation within 48 hours. Now I'll pass it off to Dean, who will introduce our presenters and get us started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Naila. Very excited to be here. We got a bold topic today, augmenting what humans do, specifically for law firms. I want to hear all about it. Before we do, let's get some intros from our esteemed panelists. Hunter, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Hunter McMahon. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at iDiscovery Solutions, or IDS. Based out of, headquartered, I should say, out of Washington, D.C., but we also have offices throughout the U.S. and London.
Outstanding. Caesar.
Hey, Dean. My name is Caesar Valenzuela. I'm a commercial banker here in the Bay Area for JPMorgan Chase. Thank you, Dean, and the Armanino team for putting this thing together. I think it's going to be a phenomenal event, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. Deborah.
Oh, apparently having issues with my muting. My name is Deborah Myers. I work closely with Caesar at JPMorgan Chase. I am focused on digital solutions and really the bank strategy and helping clients automate and use new technology.
Love it, love it. Last but not least, Derek.
Hi, everyone. Derek Bardo, a partner in Armanino's Law Firm Services Group. We help law firms of all sizes develop and maintain a healthy finance structure.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, let's start talking. I think our very first question is, we just wrapped up 2020. You know, hey, we're accountants at heart. I know all the accounting teams and the finance teams at these law firms are all closing the books as diligent as they can. What do we see? What did we see in 2020? Let's do a quick recap when it came to changes and how people were able to pivot through COVID. Anything that you saw that you wanted to highlight? Go ahead, Hunter. Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'll jump in, right? So, you know, we saw a rapid change. We had folks that were traditionally in office and used to that kind of collaboration, the ability to go in, touch physical documents, you know, print them and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't have necessarily home offices, especially in major metros. They went into the office for those kinds of resources. And of course, we saw an impact on the court system itself with the limitations of what could go into court and how it changed to, well, we got Zoomed. We got Zoom everything, right? Right now we're on GoToWebinar, but everything went virtual. And so we saw a rapid pivot from, okay, we can do this in person. I can walk something to your desk. I can have you have a physical signature. I can have you, you know, walk down the hall and get somebody, to having to do it all virtually. And so we saw rapid adoption in many collaboration platforms, whether it was Teams or Slack or different kind of chat apps, and of course the virtual meetings. And we also saw a quick pivot to resources or team members that weren't traditionally work from home team members. They had to get the equipment and the needs to be able to accommodate the work from home. And so you saw folks that were used to have all their equipment in the office have to either figure out a way and get new equipment. So I heard of law firms purchasing thousands of laptops rapidly overnight, because all of a sudden you had to have all the support staff at home as well, which were normally in-office team members, to now, okay, we have to optimize it. So I think early in the pandemic, we saw kind of this phase of not denial, but temporary band-aids and fixes. So I will do this way because this is only going to last a month or a couple of months. Then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, this is going to be around for a while, so let's try to create efficiencies. Let's try to figure out a better way. We went through the same thing ourselves, right? So we went through a temporary evidence handling protocol to a, all right, we're going to be in this for a while protocol, to, okay, this might be the new normal for some of this stuff. Let's figure out how to make it even better. And better was kind of twofold, right? Better efficiently and also better for the employee experience, because a lot of things changed over the course of the years, not the least of which is how we received money. That got changed real quick and in a hurry because we still all need to receive the money to pay the bills that didn't stop coming. So I'm sure somebody else has a few thoughts around that front.
Wow. Hey, he's teeing you up right there, Caesar, Deborah. When we talk about, you know, payments and all that, what did you see?
You know, I mean, Hunter was right on. You know, we saw so many ways that companies and finance teams and account teams try to continue working from this work from home environment, from things like taking the deposit check scanner to someone's house and having all the checks now being mailed to that person's residence as an option, to still having the account team come in periodically a couple of times a week in order to process the invoices, both outgoing and incoming, and the payments, both collections and issuing of payments. And partners that still had to come in to sign the checks. And so we helped a lot of our clients, especially in March, April timeframe, as they were evaluating how are we going to work in this new environment, using our digital solutions, which Deborah and her team are phenomenal at, to really deliver for our clients so that they can automate, digitize, and streamline that entire process from issuing or collect or receiving an invoice to paying or collecting on that invoice, doing everything electronically, everything digital, so your staff can really 100% work from home.
Yeah, and just to jump in on what Caesar said, and it kind of piggybacks off of what Hunter said, I think early on, we tried to do a lot of training and webinars for clients who were using banking portals, but not to the full capability, really trying to say like, hey, you may not realize there's a workflow tool in here for your receivables. So while you can look at certain images, if you scan them, you can also direct them electronically to other folks on your team. So you can't walk over to a desk, but here are some tips and tricks to use to be able to start to use some of our electronic tools that sort of come as part of the banking portal, but clients just weren't using because they didn't have to. And I would say sort of in the longer term, Hunter, to your point, like, okay, it looks like this is going to take a while. Maybe we should think about optimizing. We had a lot of clients coming to us saying, you know, what if I sort of opened up a lockbox so that we're not redirecting mail to a person's home, but rather let's redirect it and get this out of our office anyway, because it's something we always had on our agenda, maybe at some point as our volume grew, to move it off. But really outsourcing that to the bank. And same thing with like check print. A lot of clients going into the office having to print and sign checks sort of started to say, what if I just move this to the bank and let the bank print and mail so we don't have to worry about these resources? My husband is in technology. He's literally at his office right now dealing with a check print issue. It's like 7 different times he's had to go in, and we just keep laughing like these are the things you can't do from home. So I think a lot of clients really looked at optimizing their workflow in the long run.
Yeah, love that. Derek, from a financial and accounting perspective, what are the results showing us? What is the industry telling us? I know the law firm group does a lot of surveys and whatnot. What are we seeing?
Yeah, well, just first to touch on what everybody said, I think what we've seen is positive results from everybody using their remote capabilities. And as everybody's really alluded to, these are things that have been really right under our noses and we just haven't gotten to yet. Zoom, nothing was new with Zoom when all this happened. Thank God it was there. The check printing capabilities that Deborah, you mentioned, they were there. One of the things that we've seen firms utilize more are the paperless billing and kind of internal workflows inherent in their practice management system that have just been utilized more, and that's caused a change of process. So there's some pain that goes along with it, but you've generally been able to maintain. And by doing that, from a financial standpoint, we've seen overall, especially when you consider the benefits of PPP, firms' profits are really up or hanging in there. Very seldom do we see a firm in our work that's really suffering. So we've been able to hold on through the uncertainty, really thanks to PPP and a lot of drastic cost cuts. And that marketing and business development, it wasn't just a fat trimming, it was a full butchering of those expenses, and it's really brought a lot to the bottom line. So, because of that, while we've seen kind of the demand, when you take out the PPP and the benefits of those, those loans and the income that it's created, you really see, even with the cost cuts, that there are some negative impacts of what's happened. We've got demand down, we've got expenses kind of down or managed, but still, just like we did in the last recession, we've kind of cut all we can. So there's nowhere to go here but kind of up when it comes to those expenses. And as things get back to normal in the what's anticipated to be the latter half of 2021, fingers crossed, that may pose some issues. We really got to work out the demand issues. But all in all, weathered the storm really nicely through the pandemic so far. Nobody is certain about what's going to happen, and everybody's really approaching 2021 really cautiously.
So Derek, Dean, if I may real quick, just because something Derek said kind of piqued my attention, especially with the surveys and kind of the input is, we arguably have found a new way of doing business, and there's some things that are not going to go back to the way they were. And we look at travel and marketing and some of those expenses that we were doing it what I'll call the old school way, or the way that we've done it for so many years with success. I'm curious, and only time will tell, what the new normal of that's going to be, right? Are we going to get a full weight of those expenses back, or are we going to get some modified version? Because we've learned, hey, we can have good conversations and relationships over Zoom. Is it the same? No, but I often say, if I saw you, twice a year, I'll see you once a year. If I saw you 4 times a year, maybe I'll see you twice, kind of scenario. Like, it's going to be some kind of ratio because the business case is just changing.
Yeah. A big factor in the industry. There is so much that's been spent on traditional business development, and the question is, if those expenses are restored, where's that money put? Is it put to technology investments? Digital marketing is something that can have a really significant future. We were just talking to our advertising PR arm, AMF, about that very topic. I mean, if there are some huge opportunities for law firms to really maximize these dollars when they get back to kind of business, quote unquote, business as usual.
Yeah, love it, Derek. I got to ask you a couple. Go ahead, Caesar. Go ahead.
Real quick, Dean. There was a survey that was done of the top challenges for law firms, and this survey was done pre-COVID, and it identified operational efficiency and pricing pressure as being the first and second top challenges that law firms are facing. And this was pre-COVID. So I can only imagine that those two have become even more focused, much more of a concern for law firms as their clients are putting pricing pressure on them. And so these efficiencies that these firms have been able to adapt to be able to work in this COVID environment, I believe they're going to continue post-COVID, because that's what's going to drive operational efficiency and allow them to maintain margins while still facing some type of pricing pressure.
No, that's great. That's great, Caesar. Derek, a couple questions, follow up to some of the things that you talked about. Obviously PPP was something that we all dealt with so much. That might have been the 3, besides COVID, that might have been the acronym we said most in 2020. Derek, so let's talk about how many, if you're talking about a percentage of law firms got the PPP, what does that look like? And then maybe you can give some insight on how law firms are getting that forgiven. And then I have another follow-up question on that as well.
Yeah, if they qualified, meaning there's a cap on who could get it at 500 employees. If they qualified, you're looking at close to 100% of what we've seen, and that's been confirmed in some of the other surveys that we've read, in addition to those that we've performed amongst ourselves. It's very seldom that firms didn't take it because there's so much uncertainty.
Great. So, and then are all of those firms getting that forgiven?
So far, for those banks that are accepting the forgiveness applications, we've seen pretty much all 100% forgiveness. Obviously, that depends on what was spent, so that's not necessarily across the board. And they're working their way through the banks and then through the SBA for approval. So we anticipate anybody who asks for it is going to get approval. It changes, almost daily is what it seems like as far as the announcements that come out and the guidance we receive. So, qualify that with it's still changing so much. It could change at any minute.
Amen. Interim final guidance, the most key words when it comes to PPP, right? One more question. They just revised. They had another, right? I can't remember what the act is called, but they just passed that on 12/27, I think, of last year. And I think it had some provisions for employee retention credits. Are we seeing any of that in the law firm industry?
We're looking into it. The provisions really relate to those that were not deemed essential businesses and forced to shut down. And if you paid people and kept them on the payroll, even though they weren't productive, there's opportunities to claim a really significant credit. And it's a huge benefit. And Jen McCabe from our team is really all over that and has given webinars. So if anybody has any interest in that, we can get you further information. For law firms, it's a struggle, even though it's not a hard and fast rule that you had to be a non-essential business. Like hospitals may still be able to take advantage of some credits for their elective surgery folks who maybe stayed on payroll but were not, really had nothing to do. So there's some exceptions to that. We're looking at it for law firms. We're not overly optimistic that there's a huge benefit in law firms, but again, as you said, Dean, it just came out and we're getting more and more guidance and we stay on top of it, almost daily. For those of us who are our clients or are not, please feel free to, stay in touch with our publications and reach out if you have any questions. Thanks, Dean.
Awesome. Okay. Augmenting what humans do. Let's get to the meat of it. Let's talk about some innovation. Let's talk about the innovation that firms are doing now, the ones that are creating distance, the ones that are really trying to secure their future, right? They're trying to really create distance amongst their competition. How are folks doing that on the operational side of law? Hunter, what does that look like?
Well, so you got a couple of things, right? And we spend a lot of our time kind of in the discovery world. And the discovery world is by and large a huge expense for litigation. And so you look at the operational aspect of discovery and you say, there's a lot of labor that goes into it traditionally, whether it's doc review or just dealing with custodian interviews and how people are dealing with getting all of the evidence for a given case and mediation. And we look at it and there's a lot of travel time being one of them. A lot of phone time or interview time, and then you've got a lot of tech. You got a lot of tech that goes into it, and you got a lot of human time that kind of comes out on the other end when you're saying, okay, well, I found X, and now I got to go really find the needle in the haystack. And what we found in the past year is a lot of folks who are resistant to technology. Kind of if I don't have to, I've always done it this way. It's worked. The clients are happy. Let's keep doing it that way. All of a sudden get the pressures because the clients were getting economic pressures of going, okay, well, now we got to try new technology. And the technology could have been something simple like just, advanced analytics to help you get where you're going faster. Another one, though, is leveraging some of the virtual meetings and saying, okay, well, look, we can go to mediation. I got involved in a couple of mediations last fall where normally I wouldn't be invited because of the cost of travel, the cost of, being there, the hours and all that kind of stuff. So I waited in the wings and would drop into the Zoom as necessary and present the data analytics, present the evidence, and then I could drop out. And instead of having, hours and travel and everything else associated with it, but the big thing was that the client got a more precise story. And so they got better, storytelling advantages, if you will, because at the end of the day, that's what the litigators are doing, right? They're telling a story about their client's situation. And so when we look at that across the board, we see kind of a divergence. And we see some folks in some law firms that are operationally saying we're going to maintain some flexibility and agility to say we're going to be distributive, right? Where we're going to say we're going to work from home if you can be more effective. We're not going to hold the traditional offices. But more importantly, we've also seen this idea of the leverage model changing a little bit. And so where you traditionally had the hours in this, the market compressions, and I think Derek was talking about it earlier, right? The expenses that may or may not be tolerated again, is we look at it and say, I can be more inclusive because now I'm not worried about somebody being in the right place at the right time. So I can invite associates from any office to join in on this client call, because they're the best resource for this client call rather than the one that I have down the hall. So that's been kind of a cool, and that's really leveraging technologies to improve what humans are doing. And then you also have the idea of leveraging analytics and getting better insights. And I know that we talked about it before, is really sitting there saying, okay, well, we used to do it conversationally and we were comfortable enough, but now leveraging dashboards, leveraging data analytics to sit there and say, do I understand my current situation or the client's current situation at a level that I'm comfortable with to make a new strategic decision? Because now it's getting away from gut feelings and kind of this sitting in the room saying, oh yeah, we'll be fine, to no, we want to see it. We want to be able to see the data behind the scene that is supporting something. It could be internal operations, or it could be the client's litigation that we're dealing with, or the financial transaction that the client is about to go through in a merger and acquisition. So there's a lot of data coming to the surface where it used to be able to kind of shove it to the side. We're not going to talk about the deep, dark databases that somebody like thinks about in finance or accounting. They're starting to come to the forefront, which is fun to see, especially as a data guy. I want the data out in the front and telling the story.
Hunter, that data and analytics is probably one of the sexiest words out there right now, right? And they say every company is really going to become a data company. But let's face it, professional service, law firms, it can kind of be slow to act a little bit, right? Tell us how are they adopting this, and are they just diving right in, or what does that look like, and how are they implementing this into their business model?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for complimenting my vest and the way it looks, my data vest. No, I'm joking. So hesitantly, right? But I think at this point, one of the good things that we came out of last year is this need for disruption, this need to do something differently, because we're not like it. So it's almost, we were forced to go out of our comfort zone. Where it used to be, if you were doing a webinar, you'd absolutely be in the office because you had to be, in the formal setting and all that. Now this is normal. And so we've gotten out of that comfort zone and saying, okay, well, I don't know exactly what this looks like. And so I often say for our engagements, we're like the LA freeway system, an exit every mile, right? Versus the Southern highway system that you can go 30 miles without ever being able to take a right turn. The LA freeway system's like, okay, well, half a mile here, half a mile there. And I think that really needs to be the approach on anything new, right? So even on accounts and receivables, right? Like we still have safety nets for physical checks that are still getting mailed, but we encourage the adoption of new technology, right? We encourage this. So you kind of have to play both sides of that adoption coin so that somebody can get comfortable with it. They can have an orientation period and understand the value. And at least what we have found is you've really got to have that quick hit ROI. So you can't sit there and say, you're going to feel the benefit of this in 9 to 12 months. Nobody has that much patience. We're looking for next week. I mean, heck, I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, tomorrow, what's my calendar look like? I'm not looking 9 months out. There's a strategic meeting that will take place. But when it comes to adopting something new, you got to feel the benefits kind of quick so that then you get the long-term strategy. So you got to make sure you have that iterative life cycle with anything new.
Great. Let's talk about Deborah and Caesar. Let's talk about converting to cash, right? We know law firms, right, send out lots of bills, and we got to turn those invoices to cash as fast as possible. Is there innovation happening around that process today, and what are we doing to help?
Oh, there is significant innovation happening. I want to comment on something that Hunter was talking about in terms of data analytics and everything. I think you mentioned it, Dean, everything just being data nowadays. So one of the things that we like to say at JP Morgan Chase that we're a tech company that provides financial services. And we invest over $11 billion just in technology alone. A lot of that is technology that's customer facing. And Deborah's doing some phenomenal things as it relates to integration with ERP systems and how that's helping clients really make them more efficient. So Deborah, if you can give us kind of an overview of the exciting things that you guys are doing when it comes to ERP systems and integration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so to Hunter's point, I think, I think historically as a bank have invested in new payment types and new approaches to optimizing your payment. So folks may have heard, real-time payments is a new payment rail. or single-use accounts, basically paying vendors with cards. Those are all really great things. But I think what we learned is that comment about return on investment and the level of effort it's going to take to do something new. We, for the last year as a bank, have realized we have to make this easier for clients, because the waiting on the returns is one thing, but investing technical resources to make it happen is the bigger issue, right? So what we've spent, to Caesar's point, the last year is really saying, let's meet our clients where they are in the systems they are, instead of asking them to come meet us in our portal or in our different sort of formats and files and very technical integrations. So we've spent the last year and a half and have seen, especially in COVID, a lot of success where clients see that we are living in their ERP or their accounting software as a bank, and they immediately say, I get it. That made it easy. Now I'll try your products. Now I'm in there. It's easier for me to try out a real-time payment, or to try paying a vendor with a card instead of with a paper check, or even moving those vendors from paper to just a direct deposit or an ACH transaction. So I think we started out with payment automation, being able to pay your bills, right? Just making that easier went a long way, as well as boring as it is, bank account reconciliation. I know it sounds boring, but we realize we're the bank. We know the data. Let's make it easier. So we're doing journal entries in systems and actually helping those folks and make that more efficient using our data. And then I think, to the point about receiving cash, we know that's the next big hurdle. Once we're in a client's accounting software, ERP, we know who's paying you and what they're paying you for. So that cash application, as it rolls in, whether it's paper, whether it's electronic, we understand the data because we've brought all that data together to say, let's optimize this process for you. So I think those cloud-based ERPs like NetSuite, Sage Intacct have made it really easy for us to do that integration out of the box. Same thing with like QuickBooks Online for actual accounting software. So we're really trying to, as we see those systems that our clients use evolve and start to think differently about integration, we're sort of right there at the front door with $11 billion in investment, saying, how do we make this integration work, and how do we partner with these software firms so that our clients don't have to have this technical lift?
Deborah, I have a follow-up question. That all sounds fantastic, right? It sounds like you're making people's lives easier, which is, at the end of the day, that's what we all want. Okay, but the reality is, I don't know if many law firms have the IT capabilities to do all the fancy stuff that you just said. So like, how do we apply this in the real world?
I think a lot of it is, so it's where we're doing it for you. So that integration we talk about, the answer is, we say to clients all the time, if you're on some of those key ERPs, as we keep rolling this out, or those key accounting softwares, the answer is you need zero technology resources. It's the equivalent of, you're going to be able directly from your system with a very light implementation and no technical resources, be able to start touching the bank directly from your system, because we know that's what we heard over the last year. This is the biggest challenge for clients. Tech resources are stretched thin, and typically in all industries, the last place they play in is treasury functions. It's like they have a business to run. That's where they focus their resources. So the answer is, in early days, if you're on one of those key ERPs, at least that we've integrated with, there are no tech resources. What we also do realize, though, is not everyone's on sort of a cloud-based, sort of easy to integrate with ERP. So we do focus in on, how do we make sort of easy, customizable file format. So even if you're doing it somewhat manual and just uploading files or downloading, how do we give you optionality that still, while it may not fully automate, it simplifies some of the things you do? And that's really where we're focused as a bank. I think the rise of consumerism in the sort of corporate space has made us realize we don't get to say to clients anymore, here's our bank portal, here's our file format, good luck. They expect this to look like their consumer banking, where that this is super easy and you can take a picture of a check with your phone. You don't need a complex scanner. You don't need to have a lockbox if your volume's really low. So you kind of make decisions based on things, but we're really starting to get into I think we've spent the last 2 years really investing in making it easier.
And I have to follow up with one more question. So again, that sounds really nice. ROI now, are people feeling the benefits of doing all of that? Is that affecting operations? Is that affecting or increasing efficiencies? What does all that do?
Yeah, so we have a couple of good use cases from some clients who are our early adopters on our NetSuite plugin. And there was definitely, we actually are still working with sort of them. I think it takes a while for them to feel the impact, but there's definitely a huge return on investment on automation. Also, within that business case, there's no technology expense for them, so they don't have to wait for that to sort of play itself out. And more importantly, I think trying some of those new payment rails, like a single use account. If they have a vendor who will accept a card payment, there's actually rebates in that for the client. So you almost make money on your payments. You get to hold on to your cash a little longer. So those types of components go into our return on investment. It's not just the automation, the lack of technology. You're now actually optimizing how you pay your vendors, and you're actually reducing your costs or increasing your revenue in terms of that. So we are seeing that as being a huge play, and we try to continue to like talk to those early adopter clients who've been on it for over a year to say, what was the outcome to your business? And we're getting really good positive feedback on it.
Love it, love it, love it.
One thing to keep in mind, Dean, so one of the things that I challenge the VP of Finance or the CFO to think about is, if we can save you time by automatically reconciling what your staff is doing on a manual basis, or by automating the payment process that they're doing on a manual basis, how else can you redeploy that staff? And given the fact that one of the big challenges for law firms is the billing, is actually getting the partners to do the billing. If you can redeploy your staff to help assist in the billing process so that you can actually get those bills out in a quicker, more efficient manner, then you can exponentially increase your ROI as a result.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Derek, on the finance and accounting side, are we starting to see a lot of organizations make that move? I just got to ask, they talked about the Intacts of the world and that cloud-based accounting software. Are we starting to see that, Derek, in the finance and accounting world as well?
Oh, very much so. I've talked to a handful of firms in just the last week about changing their platforms. Your options are either on-prem, where you have to support the server that the software lives on, or cloud-based. And there has been a clear #1 criteria of it has to be cloud-based. So we're seeing a major shift away from the more traditional practice management tools, which are on-prem, and do it all. And doing it all is, your document management, your billing, your calendaring or docketing, just trying to find a one size fits all solution. But with these cloud-based platforms coming out, they're usually not quite as robust, but the benefit is that they do integrate pretty well. And it was mentioned a few times, we have to learn to integrate. And we're going to have multiple systems and multiple processes that we need to manage. And the core function now that we see of finance and accounting departments is really managing that. It's workflow, right? It's transaction processing, but with the tools that Deborah and Caesar were just mentioning, as well as some others, we see invoice workflow tools out there like Chrome River and Bill.com really taking off. I mean, Bill.com is a really nice tool that can receive an invoice from a vendor, take it through the entire approval process, code it in the GL, and then pay it. So it does everything, but you have to know what's happening in those steps. So you're managing a process now, and managing a process is really data heavy, right? You need to see the results. The key part of changing a process is really controlling it, and that's the last step. If you can't control it, you may have changed it and gotten some short-term success, but if you can't really control and make sure that everybody's doing what they need to do and the results are coming out the way they need to come out, your chances of success are near zero. You have to be able to control it, and that's where the data comes in. So we've really seen a different approach in using tools, and my theme is nothing that I'm seeing out there is terribly new. All tools that have been out there and under our noses. One of the big tools that we've seen a lot of success in law firms is Excel and queries in Excel. I mean, it's just getting the data out of your system. It's not relying on your accounting system to give you the reports that you need to run your business, because everything is different. But Excel is kind of like the human brain. When we just go in there and use our spreadsheets, and some people are better at spreadsheets than others, we're really only using a fraction of the functionality, right? There's so much more potential there. And we've seen a lot of firms open up to using these queries to get the information they need out of the system and then be comfortable in using the information in Excel. So it's a major tool that I would advise everybody to look into. It's available if you Google it. And it's underutilized right now and very, very valuable. And we've been successful in introducing it to some of our clients that has saved them hours and hours and improve the quality of their work significantly. And I'm thinking of closing reports. If we're trying to, pull together reports out of the system and, I need to run this report from the system and this report from this system, and then, pull everything together in one file, and Power Query can just do that. And, while you're getting coffee from your French press, Hunter, that's for you. So yes, cloud-based and data focused.
Okay, data focused. How are people using data right now? Taking that finance and accounting data, their charge hours, the revenue, all of that. How are they, using that data to make decisions strategically for their financial future? How are they doing that? Like, what are the metrics they're looking at? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think right now it has to do with some of these processes that have changed, right? So if we're looking at the AP process, how do we know if bills have been missed? How do we know that everything's coming in? And that's looking at just kind of historical. Look at your vendor analysis. How do we get that information out of the system? Okay, we've pulled it out, and now we see, oops, we didn't pay a vendor last month, and we can see that because we can massage this data and display it any way we want. So very simple concepts, very simple business practices. Another challenge that law firms have is kind of cash management when they're advancing costs to clients. Using these types of tools to say, okay, our billing system doesn't natively tell us that a bill for a cost has gone out to clients. So you engage an expert works on your client, they give you a bill. You put that bill into your system, two things happen. One, it goes into accounts payable. Two, it gets on a bill that goes to your client. And you want to manage so that when your client pays the bill, you pay the vendor. Otherwise, you could be out a lot of money. Being able to pull this data out and help manage your cash flow is something that firms are really doing a lot. It's a very valuable tool that hasn't been really heavily utilized in the past, but we're seeing great cash flow gains from that standpoint. And I'd say the biggest thing that we see is the WIP and AR management. Being able to run through a billing cycle and then pull out some really good information about what hasn't been billed. How old is the WIP that hasn't been built? What's the impact or the reason? And keeping your WIP and inventory really clean is something that helps, make core business decisions. If you're sitting on, a WIP balance of $1 million that's not even billable, let alone collectible, you can't even plan on that for future cash flow. So you really see good information from that standpoint. And then AR, it's just looking at it every day. Every single day, making that available in front of the faces of the key decision makers and making sure that those people are having conversations with the billing attorneys or the responsible attorneys to make sure that it's on the forefront of their mind, so it's being collected from clients. Very sensitive, and we've seen realization tick down in the last year, which is obvious, but you really need to battle really getting those funds and those dollars in the door, because cash flow, even if it feels healthy right now, is so important. And it's the last step of a very long process. I always tell my clients, like, this is the slam dunk here. This is pure profit. If you're not going to get this, you're giving up on everything you've done to get to this point. So you have to really make it your baby, and you have to nurture it. And these data tools and what we're seeing now is really helping that process of putting that in front of you really every day.
I love it. I love it. All three of you have highlighted the importance of data and data hygiene and getting that data into the manager's hands as fast as possible so that we can actually pivot, make good choices, and strategically win for our clients. It feels like that's all I heard for the last 15 minutes was data, 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 and let's get out there and let's win. Is there any other things, like as we kind of close up this conversation around data and how people are using it, any other points that anybody wants to make real quick?
The only thing I'd really add, Dean, is data quality matters, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And so often we see, a pretty report or a pretty dashboard that has the wrong feed, that somebody is relying on for a decision and isn't correlated against another data stream. So, your daily reports and your actions and all that kind of stuff may not need deep correlations and kind of validation, but make sure you're going through those periodic audits and comparing data from one source to another source to a trio source, right? We've got to make sure that as we're looking at it, we often say that most data is a three-legged stool. You have the system admin, the business admin, and then the end user. And unless you validated something through all three, the way it was designed, the way it was implemented, and the way it's used, you could have just bad data coming in, and you could be making decisions that aren't necessarily wrong in consequence, but you're making it off of bad information. And so just going through that exercise and making sure you truly understand your data so that you can make the decisions you want off of those reports it's one of those fundamental things that it's not that fun exercise, but it's one of those that you have to do. Otherwise, you'll find yourself, it's that deviation in course. An inch here doesn't matter, but an inch 100 miles from here matters a lot.
Yeah, and I would echo what you said before, Hunter. It's an iterative process, and in our experience, it starts with a dashboard, and the dashboard will not be 100% correct when you're looking at it. It's that pretty picture, but it gives you an idea until an attorney comes in and says, that's wrong. And attorneys are naturally skeptical. So they say, that's wrong. This is garbage. I'm done. I'm out of here. And I'm sorry if there's any attorneys on, but it's true. So the concept is, though, you have to kind of manage expectations. This is an iterative process. So if something is wrong, the tools that we have now, and what I mentioned in Power Query, Power BI, very powerful tools, hence the power, they can pull the information right out of the system. So it is untouched. So if it's wrong, it's that kind of garbage in, garbage out concept, but you have to see it come out before you can really get to the bottom of how it's getting in and how it needs to get in. So I think it is such an iterative process, and I'd say that setting expectations and tempering expectations is a good way to manage this. And the wins, there will be an orientation period, but you start to get really quick value after just one or two iterations of seeing the data.
Love it, love it. Okay, so we're here. It's 2021 now, right? 2020 is in the past. We're all moving forward. What are some of the biggest concerns that law firms are looking at when it comes to 2021? Is there any issues that are bubbling that we're all seeing in our databases, in our communities?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, corporations are most of the legal industry, right? They're the buyers. So what's happening in the economy really pushes them to act, and how corporate departments are really feeling pressure. It really dictates how they use law firms. So there is a lot of uncertainty around what's going to happen with those relationships. A lot of law firms struggle with e-billing platforms and lose thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars through these e-billing platforms. So there's just this overall uneasiness going into 2021 of, how do we do this better? How do we maintain our relationships? How do we deliver services differently? How does all this come together so that we can just run a better business? And because of that, we're seeing, accounting departments that have traditionally been accounting focused are really moving towards finance departments. We expect to see a lot more usage of artificial intelligence, whether it's bots to book transactions or even just basic OCR text recognition. Bill.com has it, and it's a really great tool. You get an invoice, and it basically prepares it for you and puts it in your system, and you just go in and review it. So turning a preparer into a reviewer is kind of the same concept. You're really turning the accounting department into more financial analysts, which is really important because you need somebody overseeing this really complex data structure that is obviously there's certain functions that need to come out. You need to get bills, you need to collect money, you need to pay bills. All that needs to happen. But then having somebody, I was talking to somebody this morning, they said having somebody bird dog that from the attorneys. I've never heard the term before, but apparently it's take that away and really own it, is something that the accounting departments need to really push this information in front of attorneys, say, here's what I'm seeing, you need to help do something about it. So that's where we see really the future going, because we can rely on a lot of the manual entry and input and some of these process improvements that Deborah and Caesar are talking about to take away a lot of the day-to-day from the accounting team. So it really kind of changes the role a little bit. We've seen it already in navigating this storm, and we expect to see it quite a bit going into 2021 and on.
What I heard there is, oh, go ahead, Caesar, please.
Yeah, I was going to say Derek is right, spot on as it relates to how you're seeing the shift in how the accounting function at firms, not only law firms, but industry, economy-wide. The accounting function is really being moved from a journal entry reconciliation kind of task to a more strategic, put my mind hat on, let me figure out how to help my company, my law firm make more money, reconcile, collect faster, reduce the cost of our vendor suppliers. I mean, it's become a much more strategic process, and that's all being driven by what we talked about, the pricing pressure, the need for more operational efficiency. Derek mentioned Bill.com. In last year, one of the things that we saw was a significant increase in the interest for that platform. We actually give that platform out to our clients. I wouldn't say free of charge, but it's included in the overall platform. We don't charge extra for it. So if you're a Chase Connect client, you have the ability to use the Bill.com platform at no cost. And so it really helps you when you're thinking about automating, streamlining, getting operational efficient. That's a great tool, like Derek mentioned, to really drive that operational efficiency.
Yeah, definitely sounds like predictability and visibility of cash at the end of the day. Is that fair to say, right, Deborah and Caesar? Like that's what everybody is looking for.
Yeah, I was going to say, we touched a lot on sort of bringing in clients' data into the bank and bringing them together. That really gives not only sort of the visibility to everything, like what's about to be paid, what's about to come in, but also then brings the banking data and it gives us the ability to help predict. So it was funny when Derek mentioned Excel. We have tons of clients large, ginormous clients who still use Excel a lot. And so we try to give folks tools. We have ways for them to just download the raw data into an Excel spreadsheet, because we know while we can give pretty graphs on our portals, or we can even do pretty graphs within certain views, we know that a lot of times when clients are trying to predict what's coming in, forecasting their cash, or even looking back, they want the data themselves. They need to validate that it matches and really match that up against their system. It's like where we see things heading is as we can bring those data points together, it's great for us to give a view and give some prediction to the future. But more importantly, it's important that we give a client the data the way they want it, in the format they want it, in the tool they want it, because we know different clients have different processes that they need to go validate. And so that's really where I think we're learning a lot more about. They don't want to just see it on a portal. They actually want to pull it out and do certain things with it, not related to maybe banking functions all the time. So we're really trying to make that more available. And that's where we sort of see folks going. They want business insights, they want access to their data, and they want us to bring data together for them.
Awesome. Okay, so predictions. Let's start to talk about what the future is going to look like. Let's talk about 2021 and beyond. The law firms that continue to win and really future-proof their organizations. What does that look like with respects to your organizations? What do you think that's going to look like in the future? Hunter, if you don't mind, maybe we can start with you on the operations side, right? And on the discovery side, what are these organizations going to do? And how are they going to continue to innovate?
I think that they're going to be more process oriented, right? Lawyers love to come up with new arguments and new iterations of something like that, but they're going to realize that so much of what goes on a given engagement, whether that's transactional, compliance, litigation, there's a lot of predictable steps. And the more that they can leverage technology to facilitate all of those different steps, including the billing aspect of things, right? The more that they can capture throughout that entire process, they're going to find themselves in a position where they can offer kind of an economical version that is a little lower touch, and then they can offer the custom bespoke solution that is much more of a higher level touch. And the ones that understand that process and the ability to kind of dig into their operational components and say, where do we have points of efficiencies or points of inflection that allow us to be able to say, all right, you're on this path or you're on this path. That then gives us a greater leverage model. It also gives us a greater efficiency model that says we can outperform with the same team that we have in the past because we're working smarter, not harder, right? We're getting to a place where we're leveraging technology to literally augment. I know it's the title of the webinar, but truly try to help facilitate, right? We're not trying to replace humans. We're just trying to make them better. We're trying to make them do what they do better, faster, easier, and bring more information to them so that they can make better, faster decisions. You know, one of our things is we want you to know the scope of your facts earlier in a case so that you can make those strategic decisions in the first month, not the last month. Not the last minute change. We want you to know that early on. So we talked about forecasting. We talked about, you know, being able to see in that predictability element. If you can resolve all those questions earlier on in a given engagement, or you can understand what questions matter and put the client on the right course, you can then set some wheels in motion and let it kind of be more of a flywheel effect, right? You've got momentum through an engagement as opposed to trying to create it or change course last minute. So you really got to work harder earlier and more operationally, more business minded rather than just simply accounting. I think Caesar said something to that effect, right? Thinking of this as a business problem as a whole and not just an account processing problem. That's the kind of mentality change that, you know, we see coming.
Nice, nice. So organizations are looking at AI and bots and saying, hey, how can I partner or purchase these assets to make our lives easier? Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, love it, love it. What about on the banking side? What do we think is going to continue to happen, and maybe even what will happen?
From my perspective, a lot of what we're seeing is the idea of building an ecosystem, right? So I think we talked about integration. We've said it 100 times, but it's really the idea of bringing all these systems together for our clients versus requiring our clients to do that work. So I think what I see is just the continued growth of that ecosystem and realizing how all these systems will end up touching each other, and then how you can leverage that data and deliver it to the client. I do agree with what Hunter said, though. We're seeing clients for sure who are, it's the process change that's hard, right? So I think one of the things we're going to have to start making an argument for in general is you almost have to sort of get out of the specific maybe AP shop and like take it up a level to explain, I know this individual maybe thinks that this is impossible. It's not, and here's a case for change. Because we do see that right now with some of the automated solutions that we've had clients implement. In the end, they're thrilled with it, but the road to get there is hard and change is difficult in organizations. So I think really it's trying to make it easier for clients how to understand, to take on that change, but also what the payback will, right? You have resources now who can focus in bird dog on collections and things like that. You have to sort of make that case for them from a business perspective versus just a technology perspective. And Caesar, I don't know if you had anything else to add on.
I think you're spot on. I'm really excited about the payment industry and how it's being disrupted, innovated with fintechs. And I think the banks that are going to be competitive with the fintechs are the ones that are going to be just as disruptive. We're seeing technologies like integrated payables, where you just send us the file and we'll make all the payments for you. You don't have to worry about check runs or putting in the ACHs. But there are other great things coming out, like single-use accounts, where you can actually generate a specific credit card number for a specific invoice. And that practically eliminates any fraud potential associated with using corporate credit cards for purchasing needs. But the other one that's coming out, which I'm really excited about, is real-time payments. So think about wires, the ability to send a wire out today and it gets deposited into the recipient's account today. It's expensive. You have to only do it during a certain time of the day because there's a cutoff time. Real-time payments is 24/7, 365 days a year. It literally gets deposited within 15 seconds at a fraction of the cost. And we at JP Morgan are looking at, we're at 38 countries. We're looking to expand that to over 58 countries, I believe, by the end of the year. That's going to be so exciting for our clients that are doing wires. It's going to be a cost saving option for them, and it's going to be an option. If I'm home and I'm the VP of Finance and I forgot to do a wire, heck, let me go on my mobile device and do the real-time payment right now. It's going to be exciting.
That's what I'm talking about, making people's lives easier. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, Derek, you got some big acts to follow. Tell us what the future looks like on the finance and accounting side. What is it? What are we doing there? What are we going to see?
Yeah, and I touched on it before, so just to recap briefly, artificial intelligence, reducing the manual entry and more of a real data focus is huge. So firms will do that and have to do that. Because that's how we survive. And I think with that, I like to talk about the theory of evolution, right? Firms just have to know that they have to be able to change. And it hasn't been entrenched in law firms in many decades, and the last recession really started that. But it's not going to be the biggest, the strongest that really survive through this. It's the ones who can adapt to change. And as they can do these things, Chase comes out with a new banking feature. Geez, we could really improve our operations if we take advantage of that. Great. Here's how we're going to do it and manage that change. So when I say accounting departments are becoming more finance departments and analysts, there's also a project management and change management focus that really needs to be inherent in these departments, because it's no longer just a back office operation. It needs to drive, to really run the show and take over responsibility for making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do. So just continuing on down that road, same concepts as I mentioned before apply. And to kind of just put a big fat bow on it, you have to be able to see the information and the results of all this process. So you have to have access to the data, and that's not going to come right out of every system, because that's one size fits all. It's not really going to come out of any system. So a lot of the requirements for practice management systems, they have great reporting. Good. That reporting should not just be a bunch of canned reports that you might be able to use when the situation fits. It should really, you have to access this data. So the more that you can access the data from Chase, as Deborah and Caesar were talking about, the more that you can access the data from your practice management system and then put it all together and manage it in the stool concept that Hunter mentioned is just so key, and it will drive success in the future. And this is not long-term hypothetical. This is now. This is short-term 2021. And everything's available.
Love it, love it. Well, this has been a fantastic panel. Great to see how organizations are really helping law firms pivot, create distance, and really win today and in the future. I think you guys all did fantastic and shared a lot of insight. Maybe if we could just quickly, the last thing we could do, just share your email address. If anybody heard something that they thought could be very helpful to their organization, why don't we do that, and then we'll close up. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Hunter.
Sure. It's H McMahon, MCMAHON @idsinc.com.
Outstanding. The team from JP Morgan Chase.
It's Cesar, CESAR .A.Valenzuela, VALENZUELA @chase.com.
And then it's Deborah.R.Myers, MYERS @jpmorgan.com.
And I am at Derek, DEREK, Bardo, or Derek.Bardo @armaninollp.com, spelled exactly like it looks on Dean's shirt.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been great. Excited for what we're going to do in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.